Hey guys, it's Tarithal. I'm going to give you a quick summary on how to play Augmentation Evoker for 11.0 Mythic Plus and answer some of the commonly asked questions that people ask me in my Twitch stream. Alright, TLDR. Your primary job is to keep buffs on your party members. These are the buffs that you want to maintain. Generally keep prescience up on your DPS players as it gives 3% crit, and when talented into Fate Mirror, it can replicate damage or healing at 15% effectiveness. Ebon Might gives 5% of your main stat to everyone in the party. Refresh it when it falls off, or if there are 4 seconds or less remaining on the buff. Buff someone with blistering skills to give them armor. Usually keep it on the tank or swap it to a squishy DPS if they're about to take a large physical damage hit. Make sure you're actually tracking that your party members have this buff, as it can fall off when people take damage. Source of Magic is a buff that can only go on your healer. It gives them 3% additional healing and damage and provides them with a small amount of mana whenever you use your empowered spells. You can just put this on the healer before the dungeon starts and then you can forget about it. You are expected to have this in high keys or else you are trolling. Alright, the primary mechanic of Augmentation Evoker is to apply and maintain Ebon Might. You maintain the buff by casting either Empowered Spells, Eruption, or Breath of Eons. Okay, so your Empowered Spells. Commonly asked question is, at what rank do I need to cast my Empowered Spells? Fire Breath does the same amount of total damage regardless of which rank you use. Rank 1 Fire Breath will do low initial damage but will leave a long-lasting dot. Higher ranked Fire Breaths will do more initial damage but have a shorter duration dot. There's a talent that you take that now increases the damage of your other abilities by 20% when you have Fire Breath dot active on targets, so the general rule is to put a dot on targets for as long as possible. Obviously, use higher ranks if the mobs are going to die quickly, and use lower ranks if you want Fire Breath to last longer. Also use higher ranks if you need to do damage in a burst window, since the ability has more upfront damage. Upheaval. Upheaval does not do more damage the longer you channel it. It just increases the size of the ability. If mobs are spread out, channel it longer. It's that simple. Side note, Eruption reduces the CD of Upheaval. A general rule with empowered spells is to use them while Ebon Might is rolling to extend the duration. These abilities also pack a punch, and Ebon Might increases your personal damage, so make sure that it's rolling before you use them. Fire Breath increases the damage of your other abilities, so try to use it before using Upheaval. Fire Breath used while Ebon Might is rolling also gives your party a buff called Inferno's Blessing, which is just simply more damage. This is another reason to make sure your Ebon Might is already rolling before using Fire Breath. Major cooldowns. Tip the scales. Just a heads up, you can use this before the key starts and it'll go off cooldown, and also use it when you want to cast an empowered spell at full rank. Once again, if you're using it at the start of a pull, maybe consider using it with an Upheaval, since you want your Fire Breath to last as long as possible. Breath of Eons. This is your major cooldown. Try to line this up with friendly offensive cooldowns. The more damage your group does during its window, the more damage you do. Try to keep an eye on your party's offensive cooldowns using an add-on like OmniCD, just to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck. Time skip. No one really took this in Dragonflight, but it does seem like an enticing option now. This is essentially shifting power from a mage, and will reduce the cooldowns of all of your abilities. In general, use this after Breath of Eons and after your imminent destruction buff is gone. Additionally, this ability will reset your kick and allow you to get 4 or 5 presciences out at a time. When your empowered spells are on cooldown, you should be using Upheaval to maintain Ebon Might. Upheaval costs 2 essence unless you have the imminent destruction buff going or if you have an essence burst proc. If you are unable to cast Upheaval, you should be casting Living Flame or Azure Strike if you're on the move. Living Flame and Azure Strike can proc essence burst, which gives you a 0 cost eruption. Commonly asked question: how do I live X difficult boss and tyrannical? Augmentation Evoker has a defensive solution for almost every situation. The general rule of thumb is to use your shortest cooldowns first, then use the bare amount that you need to live the mechanic. Rescue Shield has the shortest cooldown, and can be thought of as a 30% DR for a single hit for you and a friendly party member. Try to pick squishy friendlies for this ability, and try not to reposition allies. Try to spread out Obsidian Scales and Rescue Shield when possible, outside of rot situations. Obsidian Scales is buffed by another 10% if you're playing the Scalecommander tree, and should be used as your second priority cooldown. Zephyr essentially just gives your group 20% avoidance. It has a fairly short range, so make sure you're close to everyone when you press this button. Your hover is now a personal defensive based on the hero tree that you select. Additionally, as an Augmentation Evoker, it's okay to run an item or a trinket with a shield. Utility. Take whatever utility your group needs. Just remember that your Sleepwalk functions as a sap, meaning that you can walk through the mobs affected by Sleepwalk without entering combat. Cauterize is a 1-minute universal dispel. It will be used this season to take off curses, bleeds, and poisons. Stat priority. Mastery causes your empowered spells to give friendly units versatility. It increases the duration of some of your buffs and helpful abilities. Crit can cause your abilities to do more damage, can extend the duration of Ebb and Might, and also has a special interaction with Chronowarden via the talent Double Time. Haste is a good stat, but you'll naturally get a lot of it in your talent tree. Versatility is a good survival stat, but doesn't really help speed up your dungeons. Special note. Mastery snapshots, so you want to use trinkets or potions or whatever kind of procs you can before sending your buffs to your allies. However, Intellect updates dynamically, so your Ebb and Might will update dynamically based on your main stat. Chronowarden. Main highlights. Tip the Scales is now a major cooldown that gives you a 30-second haste buff. Upheaval will do more damage. While you have the haste buff rolling from your Tip the Scales, your empowered spells apply Threads of Fate. Hover gives you a 3-second DR when used. Double Time is the most impactful talent in the tree. This allows your Ebb and Might impressions to crit, giving them 1.5 times the effect. One note about Chronowarden, it's often recommended that you do a Cancelaura for Tip the Scales. Using a Cancelaura Tip the Scales allows you to do a rank 1 Fire Breath. Once again, you do 20% additional damage to targets affected by your Fire Breath. It's important to use your Tip the Scales before the Fire Breath and not save it for Upheaval so that you get the additional Thread of Fate. Here are the talents I recommend for Chronowarden. Here's the rotation I recommend for Chronowarden. Scalecommander. Your empowered spells give you a buff called Mass Eruption. This stacks up to 2 times. Using an eruption while buffed with Mass Eruption puts a debuff called Bombardment on the target. While debuffed, enemies hit have a chance to be bombarded, which does some damage and reduces the cooldown of your Breath of Eons. Breath of Eons can now be steered and cancelled by clicking the ability again. Your black abilities passively do 20% more damage. Breath of Eons now leaves a dot called Melt Armor on the targets. Hover now provides 10% personal avoidance while active, and Obsidian Scales is now 10% stronger. These are the talents I recommend for Scalecommander. This is the rotation I recommend for Scalecommander. In a prior video, I recommended tab targeting to put bombardments on a different target. Note that since then, the ability has been changed to fully pandemic, meaning that there's less of a reason to tab target around when applying bombardments. My talent and rotation recommendations are obviously just a baseline of what I think are good. Each dungeon and situation will call for a different setup, depending on the needs of your group. Common question. Is augmentation good in low keys? How do I know if my augmentation is good? Good aug thinks like a healer. You have a powerful kit to mitigate damage before it happens. You use your rescue shields and zephyrs before the damage actually happens. You help your healer with dispels and you call out defensives. A successful aug understands when DPS wants to send damage. You buff people before the damage goes out. Your damage is linked to your party's damage. There's a stereotype that augs are unskilled on low keys, and while that could be true, it often goes both ways. Your damage is linked to your party, so if other DPS are not managing their cooldowns well, your damage will suffer. Lastly, as aug you are expected to be the job doer. You need to be someone who plays to win the key, and do the mechanics and jobs for the group. Sometimes this means dropping throughput in your talent tree, just to bring the utility that the group needs for the dungeon. Help your tank group mobs, and be willing to be the shot caller for your group. Final thoughts. Augmentation will make you a better player over time since your skill level is dependent on your knowledge of the other classes and roles in your group. The better you understand your party's offensive and defensive abilities, the more effective you will be. I'll add a couple recommendations for Weakauras, macros, and add-ons below. This video is meant to be a short TLDR on Augmentation Evoker, but if you think I missed anything important, please let me know below. Have a great start of the expansion. Thank you for watching.